On the broadcast tonight, secrets out. U.S. intelligence catches Iran building a hidden nuclear plant. President Obama blasts Tehran and Iran's president pushes back. Now what? The terror plot here at home. New details about what the man at the center of it was planning and why. Swine flu vaccine, it's almost here, but health officials are now voicing concerns. National treasures, the man who's made epics about wars and baseball, Ken Burns, tells Brian why his new film is one all Americans need to see. And kids from Chicago far from home learning to make a difference. Nightly News starts now.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening, I'm Ann Curry, and tonight for Brian Williams, and we begin with a high drama, a showdown over truth, lies, and nuclear ambitions. President Obama and some of America's closest allies revealed to the world this morning that Iran has been building a secret underground plant for enriching uranium and potentially able to make bombs, and tonight put Iran on notice that it had better come clean now and not go down the path of confrontation. Iran's President Ahmadinejad isn't having it. Here in New York City, he's been pushing back all day, demanding an apology. The nuclear plant is said to be near the holy city of Qom, about 100 miles from Tehran. We've got the story covered on both sides of the world tonight, beginning in Washington with our chief foreign affairs correspondent, Andrea Mitchell. Andrea.
Good evening, Ann. President Obama, Britain, and France say that they have built a solid case that Iran is hiding a secret nuclear plant in violation of international treaties. They're demanding immediate UN inspections and threatening sanctions if Iran does not comply. Tonight, the president sharply warned Iran against going down a path that could lead to confrontation if it does not come clean in diplomatic talks starting in Geneva next week.
So I think Iran is on notice that when we meet with them on October 1st, they are going to have to come clean and they are going to have to make a choice.
In a dramatic display of allied unity, the president accused Iran of building an underground plant to produce nuclear fuel, not for a power plant, but for bombs.
The size and configuration of this facility is inconsistent with a peaceful program. Iran is breaking rules that all nations must follow.
Today, the CIA told Congress the facility is a series of tunnels built into a mountain 100 miles southwest of Iran's holiest city, Qom, on a base run by Iran's Revolutionary Guards. In New York, Iran's President Ahmadinejad said Iran is hiding nothing.
What we did was completely legal, according to the law. We have informed the agency. The agency will come and take a look and produce a report, and it's nothing new.
The allies disagree and are demanding immediate access for UN inspectors.
Confronted by the serial deception of many years, the international community has no choice today but to draw a line in the sand.
France's President Sarkozy said Iran has to move quickly.
If by December there is not an in-depth change by the Iranian leaders, sanctions will have to be taken.
U.S. officials say they've been watching construction of the plant for years, as seen in these satellite photos obtained by NBC News. Mr. Obama was even briefed about it during the presidential transition. Why reveal it now? U.S. officials say they recently saw evidence Iran was moving to the next dangerous stage. The plant would soon be operational, able to create 1 or 2 bombs a year. Still, U.S. officials say they only went public after Iran learned it had been caught red-handed by the U.S. and other intelligence agencies. Suddenly, Monday, Iran sent a vague letter to the International Atomic Energy Agency, disclosing it had only a pilot program underway. The U.S. says an attempt to mislead the world. That set off a diplomatic chain reaction. The president gave Russia's President Medvedev a heads-up Wednesday night in New York. Clearly startled and impressed, the Russian leader, who has until now blocked action against Iran, for the first time signaled he might support sanctions. And he was given more detailed evidence yesterday.
When all the possibilities, all the instruments have been used and failed, one can use international legal sanctions.
Yesterday, intelligence officials from the U.S., Britain, and France hurried to Vienna to brief the UN nuclear agency. Finally, China, which can also veto UN sanctions, was briefed and was still absorbing the impact of the news when the president followed up today. Tonight, the president also said if diplomacy does not work, the U.S. and its allies will be in a much better position to impose sanctions that bite.
Andrea Mitchell tonight. Andrea, thank you. President Ahmadinejad also said today that Iran is in compliance with international rules because the plant is a long way from being used. But this afternoon, the International Atomic Energy Agency rejected that claim, saying it should have been notified long before the plant was even built. We heard Ahmadinejad make his comments at a hastily arranged news conference, where he also described the plant as ordinary and only in its beginning stages, and said that the United States and its allies have no business questioning Iran about its nuclear program.
We're saying, what business of yours is it to tell us what we must do or not? You're just another country, a member state of the IAEA like any other one.
President Obama said, quote, "The size and configuration of this facility," the one mentioned today, "is inconsistent with the peace program." What is your response to the President of the United States that it is inconsistent with the peace program?
I don't think Mr. Obama is a nuclear expert. We think that we have to leave it to the IAEA and let the IAEA carry out its duty.
Iran's President Ahmadinejad in New York today. He also dodged a question about whether there are other nuclear facilities we have not heard about. And President Obama reacted to Ahmadinejad's comments in his news conference later today. And our chief White House correspondent, Chuck Todd, now joins us from Pittsburgh, where he made those remarks. Hey, Chuck.
And well, the president was asked repeatedly today, okay, what's next? You've revealed this evidence that you believe Iran is trying to nuclearize, trying to create a nuclear weapon program. What's next? He pointed to October 1st and those talks that Andrea Mitchell reported out, but it also seemed to duck this idea of exactly how long they would give the Iranians. Talking to administration officials behind the scenes, they believe a couple of things. One, that Iran has to immediately allow for the International Atomic Agency to inspect. But two, this all may be about trying to get China on board. One of the things that makes this administration very hopeful that this time they mean it when it goes to giving sanctions on Iran is that Russia's on board. And so everything about next week may be making that final case to China to get them to finally come aboard. They were hoping they were going to get a statement today from them. The fact they didn't does have some administration officials concerned.
Meantime, Chuck, we learned today that 5 more Americans have died in Afghanistan. Did the president have anything to say about whether he will send more troops to Afghanistan?
He was asked directly about this question. We know that there has been a request possibly for as many as 40,000 more troops. The president was possibly clearer today than he has been even the last week, is saying, look, no decisions about troops or anything else are going to be made for potentially quite some time because they need to do a new strategic review. When you talk to folks behind the scenes, they say, how do you do a counterinsurgent strategy when you don't know if you have a partner in the government over there? And by that government, they mean by the Afghanistan government. So everything seems to have slowed down when it comes to decisions about troops in Afghanistan, Ann.
Our NBC's Chuck Todd tonight. Thanks, Chuck. And now to Iran itself, where today's news already has a lot of people worried about what possible sanctions could mean for them. NBC's Ali Arouzi is our bureau chief in Tehran.
And the reality for Iranians is that sanctions could hit the regular person very hard. Gasoline is a real commodity here that people depend on. Sanctions on gasoline would mean the price of everything would go up for the average family. In recent weeks, we've seen huge queues form for gasoline as people stockpile in an attempt to beat price hikes. The economy here is in rough shape. The price of basic food commodities has quadrupled in the last 4 years. President Ahmadinejad says that sanctions won't affect Iran, but in this current financial climate, that doesn't seem to be the case. Average Iranians are deeply concerned. Ann?
NBC's Ali Arouzi in Tehran for us tonight. Thanks a lot, Ali. Now to a programming note. David Gregory talks with former President Bill Clinton about Iran and many other topics this Sunday on Meet the Press. Now to the man accused of being in the center of the terror plot here on U.S. soil. He is back in New York tonight to face charges that he planned to build and set off bombs. Prosecutors say his case is more serious than 2 others that have come to light this week. And NBC's Justice correspondent Pete Williams has details now from Washington. Pete.
And a judge today dismissed the charge of lying against Najibullah Zazi, and that clears the way for him to face the far more serious bomb charges in New York, the place where investigators say he decided to become a terrorist. Federal marshals brought Najibullah Zazi to the Denver airport under heavy security for the flight to New York, where authorities believe he intended to stage attacks. He arrived late in the day at a suburban New York airfield. Arguing against prosecutors said today that Zazi traveled to Canada twice in the past 10 years, another avenue for investigation, and FBI agents are questioning others in the U.S. thought to have been involved. Ann?
Pete Williams tonight. Pete, thanks. When Nightly News continues on this Friday evening, the latest on how much swine flu vaccine will be available and when. And later, a group of kids from Chicago learning about making a difference in a place far from home.
DC. Sunday, 2 exclusive interviews. Former President Bill Clinton on the challenges facing America, and New York Governor David Paterson on his relationship with the Obama administration. If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press with David Gregory.
We have an update tonight on the status of the swine flu vaccine, which is expected soon, but where it becomes available and how fast could be an issue, at least in the early going. Here's NBC's chief science correspondent, Robert Bazell.
This early. Robert Bazell, NBC News, New York.
On Wall Street today, stocks lost a bit more ground, the third losing session in a row, and the Dow finished the day down just over 42 points. When Nightly News continues in just a moment, Brian Williams talks with filmmaker Ken Burns about some national treasures and making sure they stay just the way they are.
NBC News, America's #1 television network for news. First in the morning, first in the evening, first on the weekend. Most watched, most honored, NBC News.
The filmmaker Ken Burns' latest project is coming soon to a TV screen near you, a history of America's national parks. Along with some breathtaking sights, it is also an argument that this country's national park system is the best idea America ever had. Brian Williams talked with Ken Burns about how the parks came to be, how they're protected, and what's in their future.
They are a treasure house of nature's superlatives. 84
national parks, Yellowstone would be Geyser World. It isn't just spectacular scenery, it's who we are that's at the heart of the national park experience.
And Ken Burns' The National Parks, America's Best Idea airs this Sunday through Friday on PBS. And you can see more of Brian's interview on our website at nightly.msnbc.com. His name was Timothy J. Russert, but millions of Americans knew him as Big Russ. The father of our late friend and colleague Tim Russert died yesterday in Buffalo, New York. In 2004, Tim wrote a best-selling book about his relationship with his beloved father, who worked 2 jobs driving trucks to support the family. A veteran of World War II, Big Russ was 85 years old. And when we come back, making a difference, young people helping their peers in a sister city far away.
Kenzie then.
Stan from Amman, Jordan, from Banda Aceh, Indonesia.
Brian Williams and NBC Nightly News, where the world unfolds nightly.
Making a Difference, brought to you by Vesicare.
Time now for our Friday Making a Difference report, and tonight a story of young ambassadors from Chicago on a mission to make a difference for their peers in a city thousands of miles away, a place considered to be a sister city for more than 25 years. NBC's Martin Fletcher reports on a trip of a lifetime and the man who's helping these young Americans help others. And that's our broadcast for this Friday evening. Lester Holt will be here this weekend. In for Brian Williams, I'm Ann Curry, and for all of us here at NBC News, thank you and good night.
Sunday night, Peyton Manning and Kurt Warner